here. You know, this was a 1 minute bottom, this is a 1 minute bottom, and technically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 candles. Technically, there are 3 candles in between the first bottom and the second bottom. First bottom has been formed by this candle, 1, 2, 3, or sorry, 4 candles are in between the first bottom and second bottom. Meaning, just think logically, just literally think logically. How many liquidity can be trapped there? How many dollars can be trapped there? If you're thinking about liquidity, always think it the way these are dollars. This is money. This is money on the chart. Just think about it. How many money could be trapped in here? Because you can see literally no inefficiency, no movement, no volume, nothing. Meaning there could be only like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars trapped in here. So only tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars are trapped here in a form of this small liquidity. So what's the difference between this liquidity and this liquidity? If you think it like this, where price continuously started to build up a bullish structure on the 1 minute chart, leaving several touches of this liquidity line behind, just think about it. How many liquidity could have been trapped here? Millions of dollars, right? Why? Because buyers entered here, more buyers entered here, more here, more here, more here, more here. Buyers kept entering on this line. Buyers kept buying the positions. Buyers kept entering in the market all over and over and over and over again, leaving millions of dollars on the market, leaving millions of dollars behind on this line. So millions of dollars are getting trapped here, where only tens or thousands of dollars are getting trapped here, because this is just simple 2 double bottoms, and there's a difference between double bottoms too. You know, because 4 candles have been printed between the first bottom and between the second bottom. Only 4 candles. So just imagine that all of the candles you can see on your chart is money. Every single candle you can see on your chart is money. And there's a difference between money and money too. So if you see this huge volume, huge inefficiency, you already learned this from the membership, that if you see volume, you see inefficiency, that attracts price, right? It attracts price. It has a much higher value than, for example, these slow movements. Because you have to think about these candles like these are money. More money is getting placed into the market on this movement, right? So on this volume candle, there are millions of dollars. Why? Because millions of dollars are required to print this huge movement in the market. Millions of dollars are required to create this high impact movement. And only tens or thousands of dollars, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars are required to print like these small, efficient movements, right? So more liquidity, more money is flowing into the market on these movements, and less liquidity, less money is flowing into the market on these movements. So the difference between, once again, the difference between this liquidity pool right here, which is a 1 minute liquidity, and the difference between this liquidity pool right here is there's more money pumped into the market. There's less money pumped into the market. And here's the important thing. This is the important thing. Just remember for this. More money pumped into the market equals more inefficient and bigger sweeps. So if there's more money pumped into the market, you can expect a bigger sweep on it. If there's more money, bigger sweep will happen. If there's less money, or relatively no money at this point, you can expect a much lower sweep, a much smaller sweep. So more money equals bigger sweeps. Lower money equals smaller sweeps, right? So you got to understand this. There's a difference between liquidity and liquidity. And not just in terms of 1 minute liquidity. There's a difference between 1 minute liquidity and 15 minute liquidity. There's a difference between 1 minute liquidity and 1 minute liquidity too. Now you understand the difference between the 1 minute and 1 minute liquidity, because, you know, here's a third example for the difference between a 1 minute and 1 minute liquidity, that you can imagine that how many dollars are getting trapped here, right? You can imagine that how many dollars, millions of dollars are getting trapped here. Sellers kept entering here, meaning more money is getting pumped into the market. And you remember that more money equals bigger sweeps. Less money equals smaller sweeps, right? So now you understand the difference between the 1 minute liquidity and 1 minute liquidity. And that's the reason I was expecting a sweep right here, because of course the first reason was that it was part of this higher time frame double bottoms, directly part of the higher time frame double bottoms. More money has been pumped into the market, and also it was a buy trap. So technically, it almost like it was like almost obvious that it will be swept out. This small 1 minute liquidity pool isn't obvious that it will be swept out. So the second that I just want to talk about, that there's a difference between 15-minute liquidity and 1 minute liquidity. And of course, there's a difference between 4-hour liquidity and 1 minute liquidity, and 4-hour liquidity and 15-minute liquidity. But we will talk about the difference between 15-minute session and 1 minute liquidity. So the difference between 1 minute and 15-minute liquidity. Sorry, before I continue with this one, I just want to talk about this the last scenario right here, and the last 1 minute versus 1 minute liquidity scenario, where you can see that here's this small candle and it left 4 candles behind, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this between the first bottom and second bottom, 4 candles has passed by, right? So this is this drawing right here represents this liquidity right here. So this is the first liquidity scenario. Just think about like I explained it to you. Just think about it like it's money. It's all money on your charts. Every single candle on your chart is money. So there's a second scenario where, for example, here's this candle, and this is the first bottom. And in between the first bottom and the second bottom, huge inefficient candles, huge volume candles are getting passed by. More and more and more and more and more and more candles are getting passed by. More liquidity is getting pumped into the market. And right after this one, price returns to this region where it forms the second bottom, and of course it moves away again. Then you will have a double bottoms on the 1 minute time frame. This is still on the 1 minute time frame. This is not the 15-minute time frame. This is still 1 minute versus 1 minute liquidity. Just think about it like I explained it to you. Less liquidity, less money is getting pumped into the market. You can expect a smaller sweep. More liquidity, more money, more money. Just look at this. Just look at this. How much money is getting pumped in the market. Just see the difference between this money and this money. See the difference between how much money is getting pumped into the market here and how much is getting pumped into the market here. So, as I said, less money, smaller sweep. More money, bigger sweep, much bigger sweep. And if you take a look at this example here, it was really, really, really small money, right? Really, really small money, low money has been pumped in the market. If it would have been like this, like I drew it on here, I wouldn't have entered there because it equals a much bigger sweep. But this small amount of liquidity equals a much lower sweep, a much smaller sweep. So if I would have seen this scenario where price creates a really nice double bottoms on the 1 minute time frame with lots of money pumped in the market, technically I wouldn't have entered here. I would have skipped this trade. But since I saw only small money, only low percent of money are flowing into the market, I risked an entry here. I just simply risked an entry here because it can be easily held by this trade can easily keep me in the trade by a 3 pip stop loss, for example, because it covers easily the whole area. It covers the sweep easily because this sweep doesn't require a big, this liquidity doesn't really require a big sweep. This one right here requires a much bigger sweep. So if this scenario would have happened here, the more likely a 3 pip stop loss wouldn't have been enough to keep me in the trade, right? It wouldn't have been enough to keep me in the trade. But since this scenario happened, where only small money has been pumped into the market, this stop loss was perfectly enough to keep me in the trade. So technically, these are all the differences between 1 minute and 1 minute liquidity. And the thing I wanted to explain to you is the difference between 15 minute session, 1 minute liquidity, because technically that's the same difference. So 1 minute liquidity will always be weaker than 15 minute liquidity. So if you see a double bottoms on the 1 minute chart, that requires a small sweep, right? Price will sweep out like with 2 or 3 pips. It will sweep out with 2 or 3 pips, but there's not really a rule for sweeps. You can determine sweeps with pips, but it requires a much smaller sweep because it's a 1 minute liquidity. But if you see the same thing, like this one on the 15-minute time frame, and for example, there's a 15-minute liquidity. If this 15-minute liquidity is getting swept out, then it requires a much bigger sweep. And it means that it will happen with like 20 or 30 pips, not with 2 or 3 pips. Because this is a 15-minute liquidity, this is a 1 minute liquidity. The higher the time frame is, the bigger the liquidity sweep will be. I'm going to say it again, and you have to remember for this. The higher the time frame is, the bigger the liquidity sweep will be. Okay? So technically, This difference is the third reason I entered here. Okay, this is the third reason I entered here, because, you know, below this area there was double bottoms. Below this area there was double bottoms. Here was 50-min double bottoms, perfect 50-min double bottoms. You remember, this was double bottoms, and technically this is this 50-min scenario where price created the first bottom, came back down, created the second bottom. Okay, so the reason I said that this was the third reason I entered here is because my entry point wasn't directly part of the double bottoms. If the entry point would have been on this order block, then I wouldn't have entered here because it was directly part of the liquidity. And 50-minute liquidity requires a much bigger sweep. But since my entry point wasn't part of the 50-minute liquidity, it wasn't directly part of the 50-minute liquidity. It was only directly part of this 1 minute small liquidity pool. I'm going to say it again, small liquidity pool. I raised an entry here because there's a high chance that price will just simply sweep out this 1 minute liquidity and it won't go further below and sweep out the 50-minute liquidity. And technically here comes the fourth reason that I entered here, is that the reason price doesn't have to necessarily sweep out this 50-minute liquidity is because it swept out the 50-minute liquidity here, swept that liquidity here, swept that liquidity here. So this was 50-minute liquidity, this was 50-minute liquidity, this was 1 minute liquidity, this was 1 minute liquidity. So if price can't reverse after all of these liquidity sweeps, then more likely this 50-minute liquidity will reverse it again. So yeah. Third and fourth reason was because this wasn't directly part of the 50-minute liquidity. And if it would have been directly part of the 50-minute liquidity, I wouldn't have entered there. But since it was only part of the 1 minute small liquidity pool, I entered there freely. Okay. So yeah, technically that's it. These are all the reasons I entered here, and these are all the reasons that you can actually make a difference between a liquidity and liquidity. And hope this video was helpful for you guys to understand the difference between a liquidity, for example, between the differences 1 minute liquidity and 1 minute and 50-minute liquidity. So yeah, and technically that's it. If you have any other questions about these liquidity scenarios, please feel free to ask it in the trading question channel or just hit me up in DM and I will answer your questions. But I really think that I explained everything here. It's all based on money. It's all based on how much money is getting pumped into the market. And you have to remember for this once again that if there's more money pumped into the market, you can expect a bigger sweep. If there's less money pumped into the market, you can expect a smaller sweep. And here are all of the differences between liquidities and liquidities. So yeah, hope it was helpful, guys. Please leave a feedback if it was understandable, because yeah, liquidity topic is a bit complex, so I would really appreciate the feedback about this video, that it was understandable for you. You could take some value from it, or yeah, just leave a feedback. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask it.